All right, today I'm going to give you one of the best tools for creating whatever commander deck you want. And the best part is, if you're an established player, you probably already have everything you need to build this lying around in your closet. Hey, guess what I just did? I bought like over 400 lands. And I know. The first thing you're probably thinking is, why the hell would you do that? Did you just buy a land station filled with basic lands? And no, that's not actually what I did. And I want to show you something. Come here. You see this? You see all of these things? You see these lands? These overflowing basins with the price of 14 cents. These Temple of Maladies, the price of 13 cents. Viridescent Bogs, price of 17 cents each. Prairie Streams, 14 cents. Scattered Groves, 10 cents. Do you see all that? I just bought hundreds of lands for just pennies each, really. And I'm going to show you why I bought them, but to kind of illustrate the point here, I want to show you a few things. So right here, I have the cards that were left over from a previous video where I bought 3 precons and glued them together. And you'll notice that we are separating these into piles based on color and by type. So we've got lands, we have mana rocks, and then we have cards that are cut into their separate colors. Now, there's a reason I'm doing this, and it's not to throw them in bulk. You see, every single card here is something that I feel could be useful in another deck. And here are a bunch of cards that I have taken out of bulk boxes in the past that I think would be useful for lots of decks. Satyr Wayfinder, Yavimaya, Reprieve, all of these are cards that work really well in a ton of different decks. And there are cards like this Soul's Might that just don't work in a lot of decks. So we are going to go ahead and not use that. And what I'm doing here is sorting cards based on usability. Now, this isn't something that I've seen very many people do, but what we are doing here is we are putting together a kit. These are all cards that have lots of different use cases, and those cards are cards that we don't want to lose track of. You can easily lose track of all of your stuff if you throw them into a bulk bin somewhere, but what we're doing here is making sure that that will not happen, and I'll show you how. So here I have 2 big pleather boxes, and these pleather boxes may look like they are just holding bulk, but I promise you they are not. If you look at this first section, these are lands. Basic lands. Everybody has some kind of basic land that they like. I like the Core 21 land, or the Core 20 lands. These are the lands that were given out effectively during COVID, so I had to go to a lot of different shops to find them, but these are the basic lands I like using in all of my decks. So I have a giant row of just those lands specifically. Here I have colorless cards that do not produce mana. These are all cards that can be utilized in several different decks that only have the purpose of being in here for deck building. In my next section, you're going to see lands. And you'll notice that every single thing that I sorted from that previous set of cards are going in here. Every single land here are lands that I think are useful for building within Commander. They are all lands that come into play untapped or have benefits that outweigh the fact that they are tapped. So you will not see chaff lands in there. And then anything that produces mana goes into another section. This way, when I'm building a deck that does not have green and I am trying to grab my mana rocks, it is very easy for me to grab them. I can just go into this section and yank out the mana rocks of the corresponding colors that I need, and if I have any utility rocks, they go in there as well. Cards like Solemn Simulacrum also find their way into this section. Now, the next section is multicolored. Any multicolored card of any variety that is useful for deck building goes in here, and you'll see the type of cards that I have kept in here. Nira, Brimaz, a lot of cards from different commander decks. Oversimplify, which is a great board wipe for people to have. Legion to Ashes, a wonderful single target removal spell that is very easy to use in Orzhov decks. Anything that I think will be useful in a multicolored deck goes here, and all the chaff will go into a bulk box otherwise. The next box contains just colored cards that have a mono color. And again, the only cards that are usable in here, or the only cards that go in here, are cards that are useful in a lot of situations. Path to Exile, Requisition, Raid, etc. Cards that you would see in any deck that has white. All the black cards are going into the black section. Keen Duelist is a fantastic card in a lot of different kinds of decks, so it makes its way in. The blue cards make their way into the blue section, and so on, so forth. Now, by making sure that only cards that you would utilize for deck building are going into something like this, whenever you decide, hey, I want to build a dragon deck, or I want to build an elf deck, or I want to build a spellslinger deck, instead of rummaging through quite literally tens of thousands of bulk cards you will accumulate over your time playing Magic, you can instead use something like this, where all of that bulk has found its way somewhere completely different. The only things left in here are stuff that are useful for building with. And remember, when everything is all said and done, you just put it into your giant oversized backpack and then take that with you to your card shop. You're not carrying any bulk on you, and if you or a friend decides that you want to have a deck building session, you can do that right then and there, and you're not going to have to be digging through chaff in order to build your deck. You're only going to have good, useful lands you want to build, and nothing else. And if you're like me, this is also where you put your $15 decks, because they deserve far more special consideration than your actual expensive Magic the Gathering decks. Those decks, by comparison, make their way into a toolbox with specialized 3D printed boxes so that the decks do not fall out of said boxes, but still 110%, these are just making their way into a toolbox by comparison. Now, as for the question of where to store your actual bulk, well, that's what long boxes are for. You just take all your stuff that you don't plan on using anytime soon, and, well, there it goes. I have a decent bit of bulk. This is why when people say, oh, are those your bulk boxes? When I open up my bag, no. This is my bulk. This is all of the stuff that I get. And sometimes shit like this happens. This is a collector booster box of Karlov Manor. I did not purchase this. A friend of mine kept sneaking it into my bag. He said, oh, do you want to go ahead and throw all these pieces in the deck building kit? No, it's filled with junk. I don't want anything that was in here. I already took the things that would be good for the deck building kit. So, you know, and no matter what I do with this thing, it always ends up back in my house. I have tried so goddamn long to get rid of this thing. No matter... All right, so in hindsight, after throwing it against the wall for the umpteenth time in rage, it broke open, and that's fine. I don't care about this box. What I do care about is I don't know how a Vault of Champions found its way in there, but like I've been needing one of these, and that was just in the... How did that get there? Now, you may be asking yourself, how do I know what kind of cards are good enough to make their way into decks? Surely, most cards in Magic are good enough to make their way into things, and to a degree, you're right. But you have to remember what we're trying to do. We are trying to make sure that any bulk cards that we have, we are curating things that we do not need out of them. So if you are picking up a precon, well, let's see what we would find in an average precon for an idea of what to do. Let's take a look at Disa the Restless precon to see what we would be using. Now, if we look at the artifacts in the deck, we see that an Altar of the Goyf is in here. We can use this for a Tarmogoyf deck, but this actually has uses in other decks as well, like Rendmaw or Winter, any deck that cares about multiple card types being on something, because it does say Kindred. So this actually makes the cut. Cards like Maskwood Nexus make the cut, as well as do all of the mana rocks, obviously. But there are some cards you don't want to put in your rummage kit, your deck building kit. And they are going to be cards like Lightning Greaves and Reaver Cleaver. These do come in the precon, but the reason I would not put these in a deck building kit is they cost too much money. Any card that costs over a couple of bucks should not be in one of these kits. These kits are there so that you can make sure that you can build a deck quickly that is filled with all kinds of useless or useful cards. But you don't want to put in a ton of cards that are expensive. Those cards should be put into a trade binder instead. You can use those to trade for other cards with other people, and it also prevents those cards from getting damaged. You could put those in a deck building kit sleeved, but for me personally, with these cards, I don't like keeping them in that kit. Yes, it has a lot of usable resources, but I build most of my decks as budget decks anyway, so I don't tend to have a use for a lot of expensive cards. Those just become trade fodder for other cards for me. Moving into the creature section, let's see which cards would make the cut here. I know that there's plenty of decks I would use that would use a Burnished Heart, so that would make its way into the kit, but I don't think I would actually be using Yavimaya Elder. Generally speaking, I think that this card is just kind of trash, and it makes its way into a lot of precons, but it's not really good enough to make its way into any deck unless it is a hyper-specific kind of deck, so I don't think it needs to go in, and the same can be said for Infested Thrinax. This works really well in a deck that wants to double death triggers, but outside of that, it just isn't super great, so this probably wouldn't make its way into the deck building kit either, but some other more generic cards would. Sakura Tribe Elder, Sir Conrad the Grim, Stitcher Supplier, Bloodbraid Challenger, hell, Zia Tora, Accursed Marauder, and Grave Shifter. All of these 100% would make their way into the kit because they are generically useful. They do very powerful things, and while some of them may not be the best in class at what they do good enough at what they do to make their way into the deck. And of course, in the creature section, there are cards like Arcana Cruelty and Savala Heart of the Wilds, which are just too expensive to make their way into the deck building kit as well. Now we look at the enchantments. Death Reap Ritual is a fantastic card, but Dreadbridge Chant is not. So the chant, despite meeting most of the criteria, would not make its way into the kit. It's overcosted for what it's doing, and there's very few decks that I actually would use this in. Once we get to the mana base, this is where things get a little more interesting. Obviously, cards like Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse make their way into the deck building kit. These are generically useful, great in landfall decks, great as mana fixers when you are building your decks. I'm just overall a fan of these. Cards like Mossfire Valley still make it in. They are untapped lands that do a fantastic job, but once we hit Raging Ravine, which is in the precon, I don't think this goes into the deck building kit. It enters tapped, but its ability is not good enough to justify being a tapped land. When you're playing a tapped land, consider that the land needs to be doing at least 1 mana worth of an ability in order for you to justify it coming into play tapped. And Raging Ravine comes into play tapped with no ability whatsoever. Therefore, it does not justify coming into play tapped in my book. The temples barely have 1 mana worth of an ability. 1 mana pays for an opt, which gives you a draw and a scry 1. The temples let you just get the scry 1, but I have found the longer I've played, the more I actually do enjoy these cards. And by extension, Path of Ancestry would make its way in as well. Dorkmoor Salvage, while it does come into play tapped, it has Dredge, which 100% makes up for it coming into play tapped, so this would make the cut. So all in all, a lot of these lands would find their way into the deck building kit in my book, except the basic lands. Your basic land section, build out with whatever basics you personally like to use in your decks. But you want to make sure that any lands that are in your kit are lands that you want to use in a variety of decks. Just don't put chaff lands in there because you wouldn't want to play with chaff lands in your deck, so even when you get chaff lands in a precon, just don't put them in. Put them into your bulk box instead. But of course, that's how to find out which cards from a precon would make their way into a deck builder's kit. Because as you are upgrading your precon, there are cards that leave, and the cards that are leaving might not be leaving because they are necessarily weak cards. Many of them may be leaving solely because you just have better fits for what the deck's job is instead. For each color, you want to be grabbing cards that do a lot for a little. So 25-cent cards like Thraben Charm, Stroke of Midnight, Generous Gift, these are very powerful removal spells. Welcoming Vampire is a 60-cent draw spell, which is incredibly good. Knight of the White Orchid is about $1, but it does pull lands out. It's in a lot of precons. You can find these in people's bulk boxes and trade for them. And big bombs like Emeria's Shepherd only cost $1, and these can be tempo swing swinging cards in any game when you're playing them. And the biggest criterion for me is, can these work in multiple decks? As in, Emeria Shepherd would work in an Angels deck, or a Landfall deck, or a Reanimation deck. If you can think of 2 or 3 different decks that want to use the specific card, it should probably make its way into the kit. For blue, obviously you want to find good counterspells at 2 mana like Negate, or counterspells like Refute, which give you 1 mana worth of an extra ability while still being a good counterspell. So Refute, being able to loot while also countering, is great, but cancel maybe doesn't go into the kit. For draw cards, which is the other thing blue is incredibly good at, cards like Memory Deluge and Bident of Thassa make their way in, because these are cards that have longevity. They either sit on the board and do a lot, or you can use them over multiple points during the game, or they give you so many cards in hand they are worth the mana spent drawing. Cards like Divination might not actually make their way into the deck building kit at all, because they just have been power crept so incredibly hard, and cards like Memory Deluge cost a mana over a Divination and do infinitely more than it at 20 cents. You're not paying too much extra for these cards, and they're still doing a fantastic job. And when you go to black, you want to make sure you have copies of Feed the Swarm or Withering Torment, because one of black's biggest struggles is hitting enchantments, so make sure you've got those removal spells in there. All of the draw spells like Deadly Dispute that sack a creature, this is a thing black is great at, and it's good in go wide decks, it's good in aristocrat decks, it's good in token decks. These cards are good everywhere and can make their way into the kit. Cards like Greed are great in life gain decks and aristocrat decks, so they can make their way in. Reanimation decks and aristocrat decks like things like Butcher of Malakir and go wide, aristocrat, any token strategy at all, or removal strategy, control strategies, all like cards like Morbid Opportunist. So any effects like these you can find can make their way into the black section. Once you get to red, any looting effects like Big Score or Unexpected Windfall or Thrill of Possibilities all can make their way in, because they are great for mono red decks, they are great for Spellslinger decks, they are great for reanimation decks, they are great for treasure-centric decks, they are good for everything. Speaking of Spellslinger decks, cards like Reckless Fireweaver are fantastic, and Abrade is just a good catch-all removal spell that you should have a bunch of copies of lying around. These can make it into the deck building kit. Any card like these are fantastic. Cards like Atali Primal Storm that are gigantic bombs that cost 27 cents that swing games in your favor are great. And once you get to green, green's biggest thing is ramp, so like Rampant Growth, the silver standard for how to ramp, Llanowar Elves, and all of the cards worded exactly like Llanowar Elves, Wild Growth and Utopia Sprawl, Garrick's Pack Leader, and all of the other cards that do the when a creature enters with power of X, draw a card ability. All of these are great in a variety of decks that utilize green. And of course, Return to Nature, Beast Within, all of the generic single target removal spells green is great at, make their way in here. And don't forget counter spells. Wrath of God and Undo Inversion and cards like that are all incredibly powerful and do not cost that much mana. And once we get to lands, I want to go ahead and show you why my criterion for lands is what it is. Here, take a look at this card. This is River of Tears. River of Tears is an untapped blue land that has 0 downside, but it has an upside. If you've played a land this turn, it is able to also be a piece of black mana. If you're good at remembering your land sequencing, River of Tears can be a fantastic addition to any deck with the Dimir colors in it. And Darkwater Catacombs also does not really have any downsides in my book, other than not being able to play it on turn 1. But for a land to be able to work on 98% of the turns that you have it is a fantastic thing in its own right. So I don't think having to have this land in your deck is a bad thing. Cards like Darkwater Catacombs also increase the power of colorless utility lands, so these are the types of lands I would lean on. When you think of dual lands, most people think of shock lands or OG duels, but look at the price tag on these things. $760 for an OG duel, that's a good reason to proxy the damn thing, and Watery Grave as a shock land still costs $15. I build entire decks at this price range. And, you know, Triomes are also good, and you need fetch lands and Triomes in your decks to make them the most powerful possible, right? But a Triome is going to run you about $20. So when you're building your deck builder's kit, do this instead. Obviously, using the bulk lands that come in any of the precons is a great first step, but a thing that I did, which I recommend you do as well if you like having your cardboard. Obviously, everybody who's in favor of proxies, this video isn't for you, but thank you for the engagement. But for all of you who really, really, really want to have decent land bases, I refer back to the beginning of the video. Look at the prices for all of these things that I ordered. The temples are running you 10 cents each. The Odyssey filters are running you 10 cents each. The Tango lands like Prairie Stream are running you 14 cents. Pain lands are running you 40 cents right now. Check lands like Glacial Fortress are running 30 cents right now. Glacial Fortress, Hinterland Harbor, Isolated Chapel, these are all check lands, and they are running under $50, and you can build some very stellar land bases with these things. And speaking of land bases, if you want to know which lands are cheap and good to use, remember, I have a lands guide you can use for making sure that you have everything you need for this. It has things like guild gates in it because there are cards that are, really, really good with gates. But outside of specific situations like gates and deserts, you start getting to temples. Temple of Enlightenment, it pays for itself with its scry. Irrigated farmland, it pays for itself by being able to be searchable and being able to knock itself out of the hand if need be. Skycloud Expanse, it's a filter land. It's great. Port Town, it wants you to have basic lands in your deck. If you're running a budget deck, you're already running more basics than normal anyway. This is going to be great. Bounce lands are fantastic at helping you sculpt good hands early, even with fewer lands. Tango lands come into play tap 9 times out of 10 and are searchable. Speaking of searchable lands, Glacial Floodplain is a snow land that can be searched out of your deck, as is Idyllic Beachfront. And then after this, you get into the check lands like Glacial Fortress and Atakar Waste. And at this point, we've already gone 12 lands deep. If you're playing an Azorius deck, you're probably using 10 of these, and we haven't even made it to slow lands like Desert Beach and Mystic Gate, which are not that expensive. Land bases are almost always the most expensive part of a deck, and if you are building this deck kit, if you are using my lands guide, you'll know which lands are good. I don't put chaff in the lands guide. So you'll know which lands to look out for when you're picking up a precon and you want to take it apart at any point and you want to figure out where those cards go. And then the you that builds a deck 3 months later with those exact colors is going to be super thankful that you kept those lands from when you took that precon apart. And the amount of time you'll save by curating your cards as you get them and putting them into your bulk box if they're not going to get used, but putting them into the deck builder's kit when you know they are going to get used is going to make it to where you can build a lot of decks really, really quickly. And you are going to be thankful for all of the work you put in early that got you here. I have one other thing to say in regards to this kit, personally, and that's the fact that because I had this kit made, when one of my friends wants to play Magic and they are wanting to modify a deck, and if that deck is struggling in any particular area, I know that within this box, I have the ramp package they probably need. I have the draw package they probably need. And if I don't have the exact best card for every slot, who cares? It's Commander. It's a casual format. As long as I can get you a card that is doing the job well enough, that should be all that matters for playing a deck. And in my experience, I have had new players who I've been able to upgrade their precons out of this deck building kit. I've had friends who have wanted to build decks out of whole cloth, and they've been able to basically build 85% of their deck out of just my kit. And then afterwards, they do things like hand me cards to replace them in the kit, and half of them end up being bulk, and I have to curate them and then get angry and throw boxes at the wall. That is besides the point. The point is, this ends up being not only a great thing for me, but it ends up being a great resource for a lot of people who are around me. This way, for me, personally, the way that I like engaging in Magic is making sure that everybody around me plays better, does better, and has better access to cards. And if I can hand you a handful of cards out of my box that collectively cost about $3, but double the power of your deck, we get to have a better game next time. And for myself, when I think in the corner of my mind, when I wake up because the sleep paralysis demon hasn't gotten to me yet, and I realize that I want to build an Angels deck, or a Dragons deck, or an Elf deck, or a Flip deck, I probably have most of what I need just sitting in that kit. And this is the other thing that having a kit like this helps with. It actually makes sure that you don't buy too many Magic the Gathering cards. You don't have to buy a whole suite of Shocklands if your deck is already working good enough without them. You don't have to buy a bunch of trading cards that do specific things if you have a kit that has those cards that do those things already sitting in your box. I don't have to go buy a generous gift whenever I'm building a white deck because my generous gift is in the back of a closet somewhere and I don't want to go find it. I know it's in the white section of my box that has a limited number of cards that are only designated for building a deck with those cards. And anytime I take apart a deck, any card that is not, worth too much money, which is most of the cards I own anyway, they just make their way back into the deck building kit so they can breathe new life into a new deck later. And they don't get forgotten in some closet where you end up taking those cards and just selling them at bulk prices to an LGS just to get rid of them. I know with confidence that I can build 1,000 decks out of my kit and get rid of my bulk at some point if I so choose, and I'll never miss it because all the cards that I need have been curated into their own designated area. And I've been wanting to talk about this for a really long time, so this is me talking about it. I hope you guys enjoyed. This is a very different kind of video than what I normally do, but this tool, I think, 100% helps you build a lot of decks. And instead of using the EDH rec database where you look for the cards everybody else is using for something, you end up just making your own judgment. Oh, it's a 2-mana removal spell. It's probably good enough to go into the kit. Oh, it's a 3-mana draw spell and it lets me scry. Probably good enough to go into the kit. Oh, it's a ramp spell that costs 2 or 1 mana. Probably good enough to go into the kit. As long as you're making sure that the cards that go in are decent at what they do, you're gonna have a good time building decks out of this thing. It's just gonna take work to keep the thing maintained. But the work you do to keep it maintained will be a lot less work than trying to find every card you need to build a new deck, or worst case scenario, buying every card you need for a new deck every time you want to build a new one, because that one just gets way too frickin' expensive. Make sure that 85 or 90% of your deck can be built out of the kit, and then buy the 1 or 2 niche cards that you're missing from your LGS afterwards. That said, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Let me know what you think about the kit and the idea and all of that in the comment section below. And if you want a really good guide to which cards are worth pulling out of your booster boxes and putting into your kit, remember that I make, for every set except Tarkir, I need to make the one for Tarkir still. For about every set, I make a budget list of cards that are very inexpensive but are worth pulling out. This is the budget list that I had for Foundations, and I have the cards categorized by what they're good at. Every card here is good for an Aristocrats deck. Every card here is good for a Blink deck. Every card here is a good commander to build a deck from, and all of these are worth $1 or less at time of printing. Here is a decent set of draw cards you could be grabbing for yourself. Here's cards that do well in go wide strategies that you can put in for anything. Like, these are all things that you can go, oh shit, I saw those in a video once, I can put them in my deck building kit. You probably have so many of these cards lying around, but in your mind, you've already assumed that these are bulk and therefore they go in bulk. But no, you pull those cards out, you construct a new kit for yourself, and then I'll have a challenge for you. After constructing that kit, after building it up to, say, 2,000 cards, that's a reasonable amount. That's a few hundred cards in every color and about 60 mana rocks, which you probably have lying around if you've bought Commander precons over the last few years. Build a kit with all those cards, and then build a deck out of them. Select a commander exclusively from the cool commanders pile you've got from your multicolored section, and hell, document the process of putting the kit together, building the deck and tell me how it ends up going in the comment section below. I'm interested to see how people use this for themselves. This is a system I've been using for myself for years, and I have found a lot of fun and a lot of success with it. So now I'm throwing it at you, and I want to hear your stories about the decks you get to put together. For me, the couple of stories I'll throw at you are, there was a newer player at my LGS who picked up a Tyranid, or wanted to pick up a Tyranid deck, and wanted to learn Magic. Didn't have a lot of money and didn't have a lot of game knowledge, and I decided to build an elf deck and a dragon deck out of my bulk stuff and hand them to the guy. And said, hey, here, whether or not you use these is immaterial, but here are 2 fully built decks that you can build and upgrade and sculpt in your own time. These are effectively precons that I am just handing you, and they are built out of my kits. They are things where I'm not going to miss any card that I am handing to you from these kits. But you will have far better use for these than I will because you're a newer player and you don't have as much access to cards. That person is now a regular part of our Magic the Gathering play group and has built a ton of decks in his own right. And I'm not going to say that it's my fault that that happened. That was probably going to happen regardless. This game is made of cocaine and just amphetamines. But that's an experience that I got to have because I made this kit, and I could whip together a deck in about 30 minutes just out of the stuff in this kit, so long as I have a game plan. There's my story. Now I want to hear yours. Let me know in the comment section below. And, you know, since we're at the end of the video, it's probably also time to shill myself. And these videos have gotten longer as I've been doing more stuff in them. So hopefully we can get back to regular old videos here in a little bit. But for those of you who have not already, please consider checking out my streams or my channel where I talk about things that are important to me. If you want to support me in what I do, there is my 4th wall shop where I have the channel playmat that you saw earlier in the video. And of course, you can support me over on Patreon, and if you have a deck that you want me to look at to do a deck doctor on, I can help you with that over on Patreon. If you haven't subscribed to this channel already, please consider doing so, and I have a Blue Sky where I talk about all the things that I care about as they happen, so hop over there if you want to hear me bitch about the Final Fantasy set. That all said, thank you so much for being here for an overly long explanation of my own hyperfixation. Insert end of video tag. Hey, just wanted to give a quick thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who help keep me afloat and help keep this channel going. YouTube and Twitch are wonderful platforms, but at the end of the day, stability is not one of their strong suits. If you want to support my channel, then obviously Patreon is one of the best ways of doing that. Link is in the description. But I do want to personally thank everybody who has contributed to the channel. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Britzkrieg, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravalern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Autumn and Angel, Nixie Chan, Mark Anthony, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that, Arcton Arclacier, Curatorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fireshard. And everyone else who supports my channel and lets me do what I do full time. This is a dream job of mine that I never believed that I would be able to take full time, and with your help, I've been able to do it. So thank you so very much for that. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you all enjoy, and I hope you all are having a wonderful time. I will see you all in the next one, hopefully.